Okay, so we are looking at perfect squares and how they work out. So, a perfect square is anything that can be written in the form of something being squared. Okay, so for example, this expression here is a perfect square because it can be written as x plus 3 squared. Okay, let's have a look at this in terms of algebra so that we can see the form that anything that's a perfect square will take. Okay, so if we were to look at this, ax plus b being squared, okay, what form would that take? So basically it's saying no matter what the coefficient on x is, no matter what that constant adding is, what are we going to end up with? What kind of expression? So remember, this is the first part squared, so a squared x squared, then the first by the second and double it. So the first by the second, I'm going to get ab x, and I am doubling that. And then at the very end, okay, my second term there, it is that being squared. Okay, so just to clarify, okay, this here is giving us a lot of information. So is these two numbers as well. Okay, so for example, we could be asked something like, is this a perfect square? So let's say 4 plus 12x plus 9x squared. Okay, now firstly, look at the difference in the form. Okay, I'm going to try and rewrite this as the form that I can see up here. So 9x squared plus 12x plus 4. Okay, let's try and see, is this a perfect square? So, is this something being squared? Yes. Okay, in this case, what's being squared is the number 3. Okay, if this is something being squared also, then b would be what's being squared here, the number 2. Okay, so if that middle number there, so in this case 12, if that is 2 times a, so 3, by 2, or b, so 2, okay, if that's going to give me my middle number, then this is a perfect square. Okay, so this is a perfect square. Okay, it can be written in a very nice form. Okay, and once we have decided what that form is, we can also write it down. So it's that what was in front of the x was 3, and what was by itself was 2. Okay, so this is in perfect square. This is a perfect square because it can be written in the form 3x plus 2 to be squared. Okay, now that isn't always the case. So how can we figure out how we write things as perfect squares? So let's take an example like, so I'm going to rub out all this. Okay, let's take a simple example like, let's say x squared plus 6x plus 9. Okay, so we often see these where there's nothing in front of the x squared. Okay, so a 1 in front of the x squared, our leading coefficient, which makes these very nice. Okay, because what we are looking for is, think back to if we had nothing in front of the x squared here. Okay, so I'll do this out in green as a little note. Okay, if I had nothing, if a in the earlier example was just 1. Okay, so if I had x plus b to be squared, that would give me x squared plus 2b times x, okay, because the first times the second and double it, plus b squared. Okay, so we can very easily see if things are in their square form if I can half this, okay, half whatever the coefficient of the x is, so that I get b, Okay, and then square that and see, do you get your last number? Okay, so look at this one. Okay, I can see that that's 6x plus 9. Okay, I can see there that that is like half of 6, so 3. And then 3 squared is going to give me the 9. Okay, so try that again for, let's say, x squared plus 10 plus 25. Okay, so pause and try that. So we're halving what's in front of the x and then squaring it. Okay, let's try it again as well for x squared minus 12 plus 36. Okay, so for this one, okay, when we, oh sorry, I forgot the x there, and it's here. When we do this out, okay, we can see that. So start by looking at this and saying, okay, can I half that nicely? Okay, that's 5. And then say, okay, so 5 squared is what that end number should be. Okay, so 25, that's perfect. Okay, so I can say that that's x and a plus 5 and a plus 5, okay, which is x plus 5 all to be squared. Okay, have a look at this one here then. Okay, here, that middle number is a minus 12. So when I half it, I'm getting a minus 6. So that means that the end part should be a minus 6 squared. So it should be plus 36. So is this a perfect square? Yes, because it can be written as x minus 6 to be squared. Okay? Now, what if something can't be written super easily like this into something being squared? Let's take, for example, x squared minus 12x plus 37. Okay, so we have just figured out that in this bracket here, it has to be half the coefficient of the x. Okay, it has to be half the coefficient of the x. So I am expecting, because of that, that it's going to be x minus 6 being squared. But what that's going to give me is what we found earlier on, the x squared minus 12x plus 36. Okay, and what we want is plus 37. Okay, so I also need to add 1 on the end of that to get back up to what I want here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this out as what I know can be written in square form. So I'm going to rewrite this out as x squared minus 12x plus 36. I know that all of that can be written out in square form. And then I'm going to add on the 1 as well. Okay, that way I can write this out with the start of it as my x minus 6 to be squared, but at the end I have this plus 1. Okay, that's how we find our perfect square form. So whatever the coefficient on the x is, we half it. Okay, so step 1, half the coefficient on the x. Okay, of the x. So this is the case whenever it's a quadratic with the leading coefficient of 1. Okay, we're going to half the coefficient of the x. Okay, and we are going to square it. Square this. okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite out the equation with that, okay, in mind. So for example, let's come up with another one so that we can do out an example as we go. Let's say x squared plus 14 plus 43. And again, I forgot the x. So if we were doing this one, the first thing we are doing is we are saying, okay, what is 14 divided by 2? What is half of 14? It's 7. Okay, so that means that I'm going to rewrite this out as, so for step 2, I'm going to square 7 to get 49. Okay, so I want to rewrite all this out, but I want to somehow rewrite this last part with 49. So I'm going to rewrite it as x squared plus 14x. Okay, I want there to be a plus 49 there because that's going to allow me to write all this in square form with something else at the end. So I've just added on there another 6 onto this question. I can't just add that 6 out of nowhere, so I'm going to minus the 6 at the end. Okay, that way I know that this can be written in square form of x plus 7 to be squared, but I have to take the 6 away. Okay, so I'm going to say square this. I'm going to say rewrite the end constant as the answer from 2. Okay, plus or minus change is needed. Okay, and then step 4 is going to be write the first quadratic there as something being squared. Okay, so write the first 3 terms as something being squared and just carry down that plus or minus that you had from the end. So we're going to write the first 3 terms in the form x plus something being squared. Okay, so k is just representing something, and carry down the constant added or subtracted.